The following is a presentation of the Control Trends Podcasting Network.
So instead of looking at the theoretical side of things, I decided to invite someone with more of a practical background to share his experiences on change. Aaron is a great ambassador, I would say, for Brock University. That's also one of the reasons why I invited him back. So let's give him a warm welcome. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, the change management course honestly I also did the change leadership with Barry Wright at the same time. Very different courses for the content to which you're learning. But I did it was honestly one of my favorite kind of missions that I went through. And in the end, my title became Innovation Manager. So spitball, what do you guys think Innovation Manager does?
Come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
It's a good start. Yeah, it's part of it.
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming is certainly part of it, yeah.
Create something from nothing or change something that's currently stagnant.
I look at innovation as a whole as just change, value-added change that improves, everyday life or anything that you're focused on. So if you're not innovating, you're not growing, you're not improving your business, or as individuals, if we're not innovating and changing how we do things, learning different tactics to improve it, we are not changing, and we're which is okay for some people. If you are content being average and normal through life, then avoid change. But I think what I want to start with here is that change ultimately is inevitable. It is constant. It sucks sometimes. Okay, so show of hands in the room. Who likes change? Okay. Big changes, small changes, what? Like all of them, like a big change, like up and rooting yourself into a different part of the world, say, right? Huge change, right? There's people who have done that here. Little change, updating your cell phone. Like, I hate that. I literally will not download anything new on and I sell technology, I do not update anything. It changes the way it works a slight bit, and that slows me down even if it's just for an hour. I hate that. So for me, I actually like considering change, and I like helping other people change. I don't particularly love changing myself. And even my own personal life, I have some bad habits I picked up at Brock that I haven't quite kicked yet, right? So that would be kind of a good introduction, I think, to me. Our organization, this is kind of what we're going to cover around. I do have a couple slides that are going to fit nicely into this. So I meshed a couple slideshows together really quickly to at least have something. Not everybody's a good auditory learner. Some people do need to visualize it. That was the only reason I did it. So I'll get you a little bit about who I am. I'm going to tell you about our core business first and foremost. I got like a 2-minute video that works good enough. What the ant colony is, and changing the industry as a whole. So what I want to kind of do here, and I really want this to be interactive and hit what you guys do want to know, because that ultimately that's why he brought me in, is to cover what your itching, burning questions here. What our software did ultimately, we had to change our organization structure. First of all, it took me out of operations and literally running our core business into something separate. So gaps need to be filled. People need to hire. Right, through that turmoil and change in conjunction with adopting a software in our own business, we changed our whole admin team over from a team of 10, 15 years experience. Ultimate the fence sitters, right? I'm going to hit on that, like those exist, and they do. Ultimately, I think if I remember back to the course, ultimately fence sitters, you need to fire them. They're not a fit for your culture anymore, or where you're going with your change. Even if it's your 10-year employee that knows exactly how to run a business. Then you end up with fresh young faces that have a ton of motivation, but have no idea what you do for a living. Beyond just our core business, we implement ant technologies with other contractors. So not like my family business, I go into other businesses around the world and train them on how to use this. It's not quite as, they're usually smaller than our core business, not quite as, I want to use the word tumultuous, like turmoil, but like an adjective, I guess.
Tumultuous.
Say it again.
Yeah.
You gotta give a guess. That's a big word.
Tumultuous.
not quite as that as our core business. But it's still changing them. I mean, you walk into a person's business and there's usually in contracting, we're heating and air conditioning contractors. So your air conditioning breaks down, we fix it. That's our core business. Or the two fellows we were just talking to out there, one of them used to work for us actually. He was slow, it was okay. It wasn't a bad loss, ultimately. He's working on your guys' building now, good luck. I'm teaching. There's always an accounting, usually lady, it's changing, but usually an accounting lady who does not want you in their office or selling them on the software. They're like bulleting you, making you dance on this. Like they're literally shooting firecrackers at your feet kind of thing. And other things are just like for me to have to change from that perspective is adapting to that office. It's not my office space. I don't know the technology. Beyond that, what we also did with our software is we engaged, distributors and the contractors and ultimately like the main software provider for building automation, trying to get into what all this stuff is, to engage or endorse our software. This is the future change I'm looking to do, which is industrial, the whole industry, put our software in the palms of them all, organize them all better. We're an industry that's way behind. We do wicked things in buildings, but like we're still on paper. You walk into some contractor's office, it's that old wood paneling from the 70s still. Right? So it's an old industry you're creating change in. So intercompany, like inside our company, inside other companies, with the distributors who work with those companies, and then a grand change that we're gonna aim for. And that's more or less where I think I wanna go through today, because it's changing all animals. Do you guys have any questions before I get into any of this? Some of them I may answer as we go along, but what's popping into anybody's head off the top?
Why the name is Ag Technologies?
It's a good question. Okay, so originally I actually hated the name. I didn't like it at all. But we had built in our core business an email alarming software. Right? It was very basic, it was on pagers at the time. So essentially when that thermostat on the wall is reading a temperature, say hot, and we can't cool it enough, poof, you send an alarm. So ANT technology stood for Alarm Nano Transmissions. And then we trademarked it, and then when we separated when we rebranded our software, it was a trademark name, so it just made sense. In the end, it actually works really, really good because when you do a little bit of research on ants, like literally like the creepy crawly ants, they are incredible at teamwork. It's never mind the super strength that they have for their size, but they really do work mind-blowingly good together through like ways that we could never do as humans. And when we sell our software, we typically target the smaller contractors. So the ant colony, right, is a bunch of like-minded contractors who are smaller than the corporate guys. That I do believe ultimately, and this is part of the big industry change, is that us small companies together can whoop the elephants, all of them. There's a lot more ants than there are elephants. Get them all targeted together, and now we're into Yiannopoulos' class of marketing and the battle of marketing. Any other questions? That's a good one. Cool. This is kind of a general part of our business, so I'm gonna play a video about it as well, but it's gonna cover, oh, shit. Oh.
The mouse on the keyboard.
Oh yeah. See? Gotta figure it out every time you go in.
Welcome to the Aeron Group of Companies website. This is a very brief introduction we're providing you with a little bit of good tunes. You can see up on the screen right now our company profile and current operations. Been around for 25 years. We got about 56 employees now, and we're bondable to do whatever you need us to do across Burlington, Toronto, and even up into Barrie. We've got basically three businesses within Aeron. Aeron HVAC and Control, Aeron HVAC Service, and ANT Technologies. We look at it like the three-legged stool. Controls does building automation, service does service, and technologies is really our differentiator and is our software we use to manage our projects. You can see we do pretty much everything and anything you need in a building with relation to our trades. Oftentimes we'll work as a subcontractor to mechanical contractors, or we will work directly with clients, end users we would call them. You can see our makeup. We got 56 employees, fairly evenly spread out among the divisions. Here's our client base. You can see we're all over the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And we do HVAC, preventive maintenance, controls, installations, and building automation maintenance as well. Our differentiator, beyond just our major projects that we do, we have the ant colony. So this is a group of independent contractors just like Aeron all over the world. United Kingdom, United States, all the way down to Uruguay in South America.
I had to practice that Spanish. This is one of the hardest words to say. Uruguay. So I think I covered pretty much everything in the intro presentation there, but I did want to kind of cover the baseline there. Do you guys have any questions about our core business based on this? Even the technical ones about what building automation may be or any of that kind of stuff.
Did you develop the software?
Yeah.
From scratch?
Yeah. I'm not a coder, I'm a BBA grad, didn't specialize. We partnered with Brock University initially in the commercialization department in a kind of a project with computer science. And that got us basically a master's level computer science guy to start. And the first version worked. It was clunky, but what it did was like equipment tracking was what we called it. So essentially every time a mechanic touches a piece of equipment, like they fix the air conditioning unit, they scan it and they say what they did to it. So the initial change, the first change here, technological, is paper to software. Okay, so a technician is going to have, historically had a metal binder, not that different from like your guys' books, but they're metal because they're using all the time, be full of work order papers that would, literally get eaten by the dog, all the homework kind of thing. Moving them, which are, when you talk about tradesmen, these are big fingered. These are strong men, typically. Right? There's trade chicks out there too. They're strong too. Teaching them, who are some of the older guys, are not technologically advanced, to use the software. What do you think? What are some of the challenges you guys think I would run into right there?
Who are you? You're too young. I'm not listening to you.
I'm finally getting gray hairs in my beard. But yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. I guess that's a change one too, because this is kind of what we want to talk about. It has changed. So I actually don't mind going gray. I've been in a family business a long time, and I always did want to be heard and listened to. Go figure, in front of the classroom, love this stuff. Greater you get, the more they listen. What else? What else would be a... I have no idea about that one.
The greater you get, the less. The greater you get.
Really? Doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Wisdom, guys, advice here again as you grow up and all, if you can find people who can mentor you and share their wisdom with you, it's invaluable. One of the changes we're seeing in our industry as a whole is the old people, the old guys, the old techs are retiring or dying because a lot of the work they do is they get paid a lot of money because it's tough work. And if we don't get some young people in place and keep those older folk alive, we're going to lose all that experience. And then we're going to, okay, what do you think the challenge is if you lose a bunch of technical knowledge and wisdom in an industry? What's going to happen to the next generation?
Just starting from scratch.
Yeah, what's the problem with that? Or what's one problem with that?
Just slow.
Slow.
Time.
Yep, learning curve. Learning is very expensive, right? It's not what you know, any of you or me, it's not what we know as individuals that get us in trouble, right? We stay out of trouble because of things we know. It's what you don't know where you get in trouble. And we all come out gung-ho, because we know a lot, right? We know so much more than we did when we entered school. We don't know anything on the the outside world. So on that, both in our industry, some of the change that we're experiencing and that you guys should do is as you enter the workplace is find the greatest you can and like take them for a coffee. Or in our industry, some of the technological changes are going to bring about like the wearables, glasses. Skype works now fine, right? So if I run into trouble technologically, I can Skype in front of a unit and somebody with experience can help me. As glasses and like the augmented reality kind of comes into it, now that expert who's old and can't climb up ladders anymore can put their hands in front of, a hologram in front of the junior person and kind of guide them along. Kind of lost where I was going with all that. We got onto the change of why it's hard. Okay, so beyond that, dirty fingers, right? Big fat fingers with like I've taught people how to turn computers on, how to clear caches. So you expect to go in to train a company on how to use your software, and sometimes you really got to go back to scratch. Any other questions, about what I've just introduced? Yep.
Was your software novel? Was it the first? Did you have a first mover advantage, or were your competitors like Siemens and all the major HVAC companies that already have these systems up and running?
That's a really good question. When we started developing it, there were like service softwares. There was nothing for HVAC or building automation specifically. There is that. There's like a bunch. Where we were unique no matter what is our go-to-market, and still are, is our go-to-market strategy. So instead of me hiring or me going out and getting a whole bunch of money and putting a bunch of people in a call center and calling contractors all day long, oh man, in Boston they tell you literally to FO. Like in Massachusetts, it's a funny group of folk there. So we go through distributors. So if I'm going to sell in Arkansas, say, or Detroit, or anywhere, pick a city in the world. If I don't go through those distributors, what I can do is leverage that distributor's relationship because they know everybody in town. So if anybody's still doing paper service reports, I can ask them to introduce me. Now I'm a trusted advisor now versus who is this guy? There was a lot of that. There still is. I'm working on it. The podcast actually has made a big difference, to be honest with you, from a sense of not needing to travel to sell. So the only reason I'm doing it is I wait it out, and it's like, I can tell you all traveling gets very, very boring. Planes are so gross, and you go on 150 flights in a year and drink and don't take care of yourself, you will get sick. It will kill you probably. So I started a podcast. Any other questions as we roll through? You got good ones there, so I'm sticking with you.
Aaron, I was just wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on the fact that you also have a branch in Toronto. Barry, when did that come into play?
Okay, good lead in. So actually I did a Goodman Consulting competition, and we did the change management course with you that year, and we were looking at expanding into Toronto. Huge move, big investment, big city, need bodies to live there, right? So what we decided, and in a couple of the change programs, we end up picking kind of North Toronto, like DVP and the 401 more or less. So Northeast. We're in closer than our major competitors, the Siemens, the Honeywell, the Johnson. They're in Markham, or just north, so we are closer to the downtown core. How did that change the organization? Well, quite simply, you need another phone system, right? Somebody has to do that. Right? You need internet service. You need to access everything from two different spots into one spot. The little details you think move to Toronto, open up another business, a branch, go for it, right? But when you get into like everybody done business strategy yet? The 4P90? So the network, network corporate business operations strategy? I don't know. I think that's what I went. Down in the ground, change is happening all the time. And we still don't use that facility to the fullest. It's beautiful. It's our nicest office from an office perspective, but we have storage space we don't use yet because our core business, my dad, me, all of our core employees besides the general manager we hired in there, are all in in Burlington. So here's a question to you guys. What are some strategies do you think that when you have, say, the owner and basically the whole core business in one area not moving? I'm from Hamilton, right? I don't want to live in Toronto. No way, right? What are some strategies you guys have learned maybe that would make that better? A better experience? Or what are some things that you guys think would be a challenge?
How many people are in Toronto right now versus you're saying the core, like your dad, your father, yourself are here. How's the divide in terms of the split? Like, is it departmental? Is it just
it's mostly all of our sales are local, like our internal sales for our quoting and our estimating is local in Burlington. Mostly just text, to be honest with you. So like, it's more of a rotating office. Our general manager's there more than anybody. One designer, and like maybe 2 or 3 techs out of 65. And we're looking for a Toronto HVAC tech, so if anybody knows techs in Toronto, it would be a business, like an entrepreneurial kind of role, but anyway.
So within my organization, we're a Toronto-based group, and now we're trying to kind of develop a Canadian-wide group itself. So we've got a couple members in Vancouver, a couple in Calgary, a couple in Edmonton. We just got a new hire in Ottawa. So we're trying to build a network across the country.
Yep.
We're finding that there's a lot of resources that are based still in Toronto.
Yep.
So the staffing needs aren't being met in different locations that they should be. So let's say a partner in our group, I work in an accounting firm, but the partner needs staffing. Well, he's got to deal with time change. He's got to deal with, I'm not in office, I can't go walk over to it and schedule a call.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously like Burlington and Toronto isn't the same kind of distance, but there still is that, hey, what are you up to right now? Are you in the office? So there's a lot of those like little small things you don't really realize that can harm communication or just put a blockade into it.
It's like we were talking about video conferencing the other day, and it seems so old school and so simple, but again, we're in contracting, right? Like, how do we stop the drive down the 407, because you have to take the 407 from there to Burlington, depending on the time of the day, but anyway. And how do we handle being more remote? Like, how can we be better at it? Like, you have a conference call, but sometimes people fall asleep on the other end, right? And they're almost never paying attention. So, like, what are some of the things that you guys have done, I guess, then, to ease it or change it you see?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, first and foremost, obviously Skype. We also use Slack's kind of internal messaging system.
Yep.
So we use that stuff, and then any like team update meetings we usually do, where we have like a built-in webcam in their like offices, right? Pretty large organizations, so they got those resources to build out some technology like that.
Yep.
But it still is a challenge where I find the upper management, so say partner to partner across different provinces will talk no problem, but when it comes filters down to the bottom, there is definitely a divide, and there's a struggle to communicate. It's hard to really say what we've done to improve it. It's only been like this now for about a year, so I think there is still a lot of growing pains, but it's gonna hopefully figure itself out. And it's gonna probably come down to the point where we might just have a separate division where there is juniors at that level, so there isn't that cross-country workflow. But that's also, again, larger organization where we have those resources where we can build out kind of staffing that way.
It happens, it's struggle. This is business, guys. This is exactly, it doesn't matter what size.
There's an increasing trend of work from home now.
Yep.
So I don't think there are companies that are doing much. I think Facebook and other companies that are promoting work from home rather than coming to the office. And that at the end of the day, there are certain goals or expectations that you set for a certain employee, and then if he doesn't reach, obviously there's a measure.
Yep.
And there's a bonus or whatever associated with along with that performance, right? So if he's not meeting it, obviously he's doing something wrong. And if he's not meeting it at all, then he's not showing up or he's not performing what he's supposed to.
This is I want to talk about this one for a minute here, because this is a huge change and people have different perspectives on it. So it's a good topic. Let's come back. Ultimately, with employer-employee, there's a level of trust. We all agree, right? The more trust you have, the better, more flexibility you can have or earn. So we had this debate, and you start an organization. Do you work from home right away?
Well, it depends on the organization.
Why? Why no? You
There's a level of trust that you kind of need to build for yourself, right? Or maybe it's like reputation trust type thing of like, I'm going to get my work done. I don't need someone over my shoulder to watch me, right? So kind of after you prove that, then it's kind of for some companies, it might be the norm, like it might be your work from home right away,
Yeah.
or it might be like a perk to proving yourself in your company too.
Do you think there are, let's say, HR policies, procedures, or let's say best practices based on time, perhaps, where you could have like or would this be helpful in an organization changing like this, like stepping stones? Like it's a mini career path ultimately, but what do you think of that?
So for us, we've worked now, so it's flex. You can work flex whenever you want. So work from home, we don't care. A lot of it is billing hours, so that's like your billing hours reflect how much you're actually working on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So if you can confidently say you build your 7.5 hours or whatever it is, whatever your utilization rate is, you can bill that, and there's proof that the work's getting done.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's almost like if you can work from home and get work done, you're not gonna get any flack from managers. But if the quality's lacking or the attentiveness, whatever it is, then it's just like, okay, well, you're gonna have to come in house again.
Yeah.
Like we'll give you the flexibility, but
So you
your
take
quality
advantage of
matters.
it.
Yeah. So it's almost like a trust system in a way, but
Yeah. It's built in there just like
Yeah.
just like a kid, like with your parents over time, right? You get you lose your privileges. You were thinking, Danielle.
It's very contextual, I think, depends on the nature of your business and,
Gotcha.
you know, how long, what needs they have of you. I mean, my field it wouldn't be possible. I mean, you need to be boots on the ground for some things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Jamie?
Yeah, I know in where I currently work, like it was don't give it to them up front, originally thinking, but then it turned into employees thinking it's a reward system.
Yeah.
That then they're expecting at their 6 months, every 12 months, it's like, oh, okay, so I've done really well, so can I get another day? Can I get another day?
Yeah.
If you're not putting a cap right up front, it's like you don't potentially want to build an organization where they're working from home 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Because then the team morale as a whole, if you're not face to face as much or interacting, because when they're working from home, a lot of the times
Yeah.
you don't see that person in any sense of the way, because that's usually the days they don't have meetings or whatever it may be. So it's finding a balancing act of the two, but I think ultimately, like, working from home in a lot of senses outside of companies who are trying to get people out of the offices so they can downsize and not have to have the expense of office itself. But knowing that for working from home, you want to have that balance, but you'll just know, like, with the right employees, it shouldn't be seen as a given right away that it's an end goal, that you're going to get to work from home if you do X, Y, Z and perform like this.
Yeah.
But it's just overall as an employee, like, it's just a balance act of the two. Like, it's I don't think it should be a set mandate to say you get this if you do this. And like, and again, a lot of places aren't like the accounting firms, like billing hours. That's not a thing. Like, I could be working from home right now. And it's like, am I working from home?
Will probably, my Sky Bar is not open, but would very typically go to Sky Bar after this, have a beer, and finish off what I have to do. Absolutely.
No, exactly. So it's definitely, I think, an employee has to earn it to get to that point. So you have full confidence, no matter where they're located, because you can't control when they're working from home.
Yeah.
But I think it's a trust between an employee-employer relation, not just something that's mandated that you get this.
So do you guys think it's harder or easier to be, say, an innovative company? And put a little context on that. The greatest companies well, for sure the greatest companies in the world, you know, all the ones that you're thinking about, all the ones you're thinking about. Is it harder work to do that and to be different and to change all the time? Or is it harder to just sit and be a corporate monster?
I think in the short term, it might seem like it's harder, but if you're kind of a forward-thinking, long-term company, you need to kind of plan for the future. And being innovative is what's going to keep you sustainable long-term. So I think you have to kind of weigh that out as well.
And managing the change of always changing is much harder, full-time job basically, right? Versus somebody that doesn't need that, say, innovation manager job. But in the end, you say if you manage it through and you're successful and you land up with a very good team, you've made it. And that's more or less kind of what we went through throughout about 3 years. At Aeron, we started a change initiative to kind of, again, implement our software a little bit better and bring in better people to do better things, high performers. I like to look at our business as a whole as like professional sports, or you're literally trading up for better players. I know that's a little bit kind of wallet thinking, I think, but if you take it with your heart and you lead it with your heart, then you're running with a really good team. So when we went through our shuffle, like we basically I turned over probably 8 or 9 developers in a year and a half. Right? We're freaking contracting up. We don't have wood panels, but we certainly not Google, right? And I'm not a software like A developer or B. I manage construction projects. I put building automation systems in it, but I've never built the software initially. So we're chasing developers away because some of them didn't feel I knew what I was doing. Some of them came in by the time I did know what I was doing, didn't believe me. Right? They didn't work. Some of them came in as junior and then wanted to behave like senior developers. They didn't last either. And ultimately, it wasn't the culture for everybody, right? You have to find the right people to work in your business. Like I used to kind of look at us in the old days, as like the land of misfits, our company, seriously, and it was a good thing. I didn't mean like Rudolph kind of thing, right? Where you get all the toys, land of misfit toys kind of thing, right? And it was, and we were awesome together. We were a wicked team. You start growing and you start, opening up other offices and start setting like say $20 million revenue goals from like 5, things change. I look at us more now as it's more like the Muppets now, to be honest with you. A whole bunch of energy and really fun, right? Doing good work, putting on good performances, but we're not perfect actors yet.
So you bring up a very interesting point in terms of innovation as a whole. This is probably more directed to you, Professor. You have an industry like HVAC, which you're solidly a deep knowledge expert in. You have identified that you need to innovate to grow to meet a fiscal bottom line.
Yes.
You identified a technology that you'd like to integrate
Yep.
that is far afield from what you do
Yep.
and what your community or ecosystem is accepting.
You're nailing it, yep.
And then you're going to bring in all these actors from outside your industry into your industry, and you're facing a lot of friction from these knowledge experts.
Yep.
Because they're software guys, you're wrench guys.
Yep.
There's going to be friction.
Yep.
And it led to you just saying you getting rid of 8 or 9 developers in an 18-month period. So my question to you is, what does the scholarly literature say about greasing this and facilitating this process? Because just so you know, I'm actually the innovation commercialization manager here at Brock.
It was John Wilson we started with.
And he's long gone.
He's long gone, yes.
Yeah. So I'm very keen to get some insight to on this specific, because we're seeing a lot of this right now. It's very disruptive.
Yeah.
In industries and sectors as far afield as CS and the integration of AI, to cannabis, to a myriad number of technologies that are being incubated on campus.
I will be very honest with you, Randy. If I would have the answer to that question, I wouldn't be sitting here. Believe me, I would be making a bit more money than I'm making nowadays. So a lot of people have been breaking their heads over solving this conundrum. Perhaps the best way to learn from it, I think there's no perfect recipe out there anyways, and actually that was going to be a follow-up question. Like, you have had a number of hiccups along the way, and the thing is that people were coming and going. What would you do differently now? What did you learn from this experience? And this is how we will learn as scholars, because we scholars don't always have the answers. Actually, the thing is that sometimes it should go the opposite way as well, how we scholars can learn from people in the field and then translate that to an existing or into a model that can be generalized to the broader audience. Okay? Because sometimes we're like, okay, you're sitting in our ivory tower, can we come up with a solution to this? But in this kind of very practical problem, I think we have to go back to the base, get to people like Aaron and ask them, what's your experience? What can we learn from it? And then bring all these ideas together to come up with a solution. Now, this is not the answer that you're looking for, of course.
That's okay,
but I think it's just a matter of time. And again, if I would have the recipe already, I would be here.
Interesting.
I have parts of the recipe.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Ultimately, I believe the most important part to a business is culture. Kind of period, like Land of Misfit toys, kind of that Elmo culture. But I believe in that stuff. You need to hire and slow down your hiring process to find the right people. That's a good start. There's times where you just need somebody, so you may have to sacrifice the perfect fit for capabilities. But if you keep an open communication and slow your hiring process probably down, especially with smaller organizations, right? Typically not a formal step-by-step process. Like I do 3 steps almost no matter what, right? First off is a cultural phone call. Like literally, hey, how's it going? And I talk just like this. It's low key. It's not, I'm not overly professional anyway from like a suit perspective, but you talk to them about what their dreams are, what their goals are, you know, what do you do kind of outside of work, you know what I mean? You just get to know that person and see if you can find the fit. If you think it's gonna work, you bring them through the technical side, right? And then so you technically test them, right? Then you have candidates that you know are a good enough fit, they have the skill, and then you vet them through some form of very professional manager. Like that would be our general manager. He's like our corporate suit guy. I really look up to him. He's, you know, he's a good guy to look up to, right? Especially coming out of school, I kind of went sideways and stuck with contracting.
So I have a question then, because this morning we talked a lot about transformational management and leadership.
Yep.
So you kind of mentioned how you're just waiting for that right person to come along. Was there ever a point where you took an internal analysis that our culture, the way we're looking at handling these employees, is very much different? So the developer is a different person than the labor guy,
yep.
Right? Was there ever an analysis where we have to change who we are to better match our employees instead of, because hiring and firing is a very expensive thing. Was there ever an internal analysis that let's make ourselves fit better with them?
That was the journey. We went through. I guess initially I was just still kiddish, but I was like a 24-year-old operations manager, 29 now, right? So I was a super kid running a company, right? And I was running up and down the stairs to my old man. But I had this vision of the communication of what I was looking for, perhaps, and the vision of what I've described, but that the culture and the current management structure of it, what couldn't handle it, say. So that was the journey. I want to call it a tumble, really, like a wrestling match.
Yeah.
Not necessarily push-pull, or even sometimes at times it was grumpy. I mean, we're trades, rough and tough, right? We swear and we get passionate, right? And that's okay in our culture, right? But that's kind of part of the fit we were looking for. And what we had to do was kind of peel back a little bit of that passion, I think was kind of part of it in some instances, but for other hires, you need to show that passion,
yeah.
Right?
But
so
you'd argue like a developer is more, someone's a little more reserved. We can talk about introverted a little bit more, where they're not that outgoing, loud,
no, yeah, exactly.
group kind of person, right? It's more,
Yeah.
So that's what when I heard that, like, oh, there might have been an internal analysis that had to get done. So.
It would have probably, the way to put that would have been my own kind of self-awareness and learning.
Yeah.
And then changing it, and then again, as the other teammates around change, you can start piecing it together. You walk into our office now and it's, you see 3 young, actually all Brock grads, which is great, in our office, and we're running around, we're having fun. And that was a change actually that I had to find is, the kid of the company. Like, I'm not the kid anymore. There's lots of kids. I gotta not behave like such a kid anymore, which sucks, right? I gotta start to behave like more of a real professional, and that's hard, right? Like I said at the beginning, I don't love to change, my self-thought from those perspectives so much. Anyway. Hit on that stuff. Okay, so that's the slides. Now, yeah.
There were 2 websites on your slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What's the difference between Ant Technologies and Cochrane Supply?
Cochrane's, actually it leads me nicely into the next portion. So Cochrane Supply is a distributor. They're out of Detroit. They are by far the most innovative company in our industry. They've had young people and been running that high performing young tightrope for at least 8-9 years. So they're successful at it, right? I always look at the high performing and then young people coming into the organization as a tightrope, walking a tightrope culture of too much fun, nothing getting done. And again, if you do it right, you're never not having any fun, right? But you can't go too far. So I want to move into the distributor kind of portion of the change that I experienced throughout it. Beyond getting in and helping other contractors learn our software, we had to be introduced to those contractors through the distributors. These are basically wholesalers. Easiest way to put it. They buy in bulk from manufacturers and resell it locally. Okay, warehouses, stuff like that. They are going through a lot of change with like Amazon and other internets, like e-commerce basically. They're scrambling like mad at it. Some of them invented their own. They created a buying group with a central website. The real thing that messed up in our industry is like now, so we would typically buy our parts through, say, Cochrane Supply and sell it to Brock University. Brock University can now search up what we were charging and buy it direct. That sucks, right? A little bit, yeah. I mean, that was just marking up labor. I tell you what, that's risky, right? You send a kid out there that doesn't know what he's doing, and all you have is labor in that job. It goes over, you lose money, man. That's not fun. But if you got that little bit of part markup in there, at least you cover your butt a little bit when you go out there. Not every job goes perfect. So no, I don't like it. It's part of keep it the way it is. See what I mean? Some things need to stay, right? But what I ran into with these guys, they're a bunch of, and it's all guys. Like I don't, it's a bunch of old dudes that have been selling parts for ever. And now you're asking them to sell software. And it's literally as easy as when you're in front of your customer and talking to them or you're on the phone with them, hey man, are you doing your service reports or your projects on paper still? Would you like fries with that? And they can't do it. They literally get overwhelmed with the whole thing of software. I can't touch it. How do I sell this? I'm scared to communicate it. I don't want to sound silly communicating it. So how do I change that, do you think? Right? It costs a lot of money to educate these people and you got to be in front of them because you'll never get their attention, remotely on a web demo. How do I overcome this, do you guys think?
Sorry.
No worries. Like any ideas on that one? Real big habit change.
Are you willing to change the workforce, or are you going to be working with those?
It's out of his control. He's working with third-party distributors. He doesn't have control.
Yeah, I can't change their workforce. I can help them find younger people maybe that can understand it, but then when that young person comes in, they need to learn about the parts. So they don't have time to think about, this one different software thing that's actually very easy to sell, but different.
So do you have a physicality to the software? Like define it like it's a physical component?
With a part number and stuff like that, I tried that too. It was changing their habits to, I saw it once, it was in Atlanta, and we were sitting in a car, and I was beside the dude, and he's wrapping up a conversation with his customer, and he looked over at me, and it reminded him. It's like, oh, hey man, I got a sale out. Like it's almost 10 times out of 10, if somebody needs a software, this is the best one they can use. So this actually, how are we doing for time here?
10 to 5.
Oh, I got lots of time left. The industry change. So this is the fun one. This is the visionary one, okay? So in our industry, I'm going to draw this one out. We have, let's say contractors. We have distributors. We have manufacturers, parts and hardware. And we have software, which I'm going to group as one main brain called Tritium. Okay? It's in this building as well. So what Tritium is, and this is kind of a hierarchy, these guys and then we have Brock, end users, okay? So there's a value chain. These guys manufacture parts that distributors sell to contractors that put it into buildings, okay? Contractors also use software to program the systems to work together. So that thermostat goes to probably heat pump or VAV in the ceiling. Okay, it's looking at like a mini air conditioner or mini furnace kind of thing. And that's connected on the top of the roof to a really big air handling unit that's blowing air, conditioned air throughout this whole tower, I guess we'll call it, building, okay? We use Tritium, and most of the world does too, to program those controllers and systems to work together. So I've been beating my head against the wall trying to sell through distributors to contractors. And I'm hitting roadblocks like, I don't have time for this, right? It's great, but my 10 best customers don't need this. Of course your 10 best customers don't need it. They're big. They've already invested in a software like this. We don't want the elephants, we want the ants. So my thought here, if I can get, through change, these guys to endorse the product, right? These guys will follow suit, but endorse the product through distributors to contractors for the purpose, say, of using Ant to make all their contractors deliver better products, because they're operating better now, making a ton more money than all their competitors, so they're buying more stuff through these guys and moving it through here. So in combination of putting our software in the hands of every tech in the industry, we can put tech support lines to these guys, so we're making contractors better and they're buying more ports and getting more, tech support help. These guys are all moving parts, that's all they care about. And Tritium's getting a better name in the industry. Now, over 3 to 4 years I've been selling the software, people, who's this kid? I think I finally got enough to do the big deal. How do you guys think the industry is going to change? Or what kind of thoughts would you have about how the industry will change by automating everybody all the way through and helping them all run their businesses better?
Well, going through Tritium, I might go back to what we're talking about. It's that you're starting with someone who's credible. If you're starting from the source, if you're saying that's who everybody is using now, and that's who you're going to join partnership with, instead of trying to go against it, be on the side and just be an add-on.
Hey.
Because that's kind of what you are coming around, versus just being able to implement it through your own direct business. If you're trying to look at a bigger picture and you think it can compete, then as long as you have the data and stuff to prove behind what your statements are, to prove exactly what you're doing, and by having a company that uses it already, and it sounds like you're doing it elsewhere, but even just thinking, Aaron, using this business, you can prove how it's come out and what the execution, what the results are.
Easy adoption, you need that data to present it.
Exactly. And by going to the big guy, it's people will be, I think, more open to absorbing your.
And like these guys are worldwide too, because I'm going to ask a question after this that's going to relate to how it's going to change Ant when this works, but let's keep going through.
I see this in 2 different buckets. Number one, obviously if you get adopted by Tritium, you're going to increase efficiency down the value chain. Everybody makes more money.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy, number one. Number two, main question, is this a scenario or does this actually happen? Have you actually partnered with Tritium?
No, I'm working on it. This is the sales strategy that's hot off the press.
So my question is, what value do you bring to Tritium, and why would they listen to you, and why would they integrate their API into yours? Which is, in a software, I have some experience in this. You're facing the same problem every app developer, every software as a service product, every startup that has software as their main minimal viable product is facing. We all want to find the elephant in your scenario and get them to give them their credibility to marry their API into their software so that they can to take advantage of the client vertical, and that's what this is.
You got it.
So what value do you bring to Tritium that they would actually even listen to you?
Well, I think that's the ultimate sale question, I think. I would say probably immediately it's the better deliverance of their product. From there, I think it will also push more usage into here, right? Like people will be using the Tritium more often and smarter. What I would do with the revenue that I earn from, the greater contractors is add more value from the side add-on into our software, tie it in even deeper in all sorts of kind of cool ways that won't mean very much to you probably. I mean, maybe, but it's not worth throwing the class.
No, I see what you're saying. And to answer your second part, how that would add value, and I think this is the question you asked, you're going to bootstrap yourself and iteratively improve the technology if you're going through different cycles and increase the value and increase the price. Ant 2.0, 3.0, 3.1, beta.
Yep, you got it. So Ant currently makes about $200K a year in revenue.
Really, good for you.
Yeah, it's been a good journey. Thank you.
For a new software, that's fantastic.
Yeah, over developing it for say 8, but selling for say 3.5 years. I wish it was more, but the roadblocks and the change implementation we ran into. I have one developer and me.
Yep.
I've been up to 2 developers, 3 developers, and whatnot. It sucks. More bodies is way harder. It's way simpler with less bodies. Overall, as a change and a management kind of thing, the more bodies you get, the more people you got to keep busy, right? The more you have to prioritize different things, right? And stay on your toes. Someone asked, I meant to ask this one in the beginning, but does anybody in the room have tendencies, say, with regards to change, or if you're going to be, actually let's start with this one. Anybody going to be a change leader in the room or want to be? Okay, maybe. Let's see how it goes. If it comes up, you're in there.
Well, bound to come up eventually, right?
With that attitude, will, yes. There you go. Anybody that agreed to that have, like, say, let's say call it spikes of emotion. Or you calm as, because there's different types of people. I'm emotionally spiking. Part of it's head injuries, part of it's my personality. Okay, if you have spike emotions, change leadership is very, very hard because you can mess all of it up with one tea kettle. Whether that's legally, literally, tea kettling on somebody doing nothing to do with them, but like this is not how we do business kind of tea kettle, and somebody's there, you can get yourself in trouble that way. You can make knee-jerk decisions, right? So if you get a scenario and you make a decision quick, emotionally, sometimes it's right, very rarely. So I'd kind of plant that with you guys as well, is be aware always to breathe, stay calm. When you get flustered, if you're into, like change management for real, like you really got to work on like breathing through things. Because you will, no matter what type your personality is, some people are outers, some are inners. I feel bad for you inners, holy moly. I just get it out and I'm over it, right? Consider these things when you're leading change, and ultimately, if you're going to be a leader, you need to be changing yourself all the time. Whether it's new learning, just new tactics, behavior is one thing, of course, but that would be the advice to you going at it. So breathe deep, really practice deep breathing. It'll change your life that will anyway, right? As a whole, especially with social media and the distraction there. But anyway. What else do you guys want to know about here? This is, I kind of had to flow through this a little bouncing around, so I apologize for that a bit, but I think we've covered a lot of things related to change. If there's specific questions now about everything we've talked about, that'll probably send us, keep us going.
I'm just trying to understand, I'm gonna go way back to when you said you only have 3 people working at the Toronto facility.
Yep.
Right, so what's the point of the Toronto facility?
It's a good question. So, it gave us a Toronto address. We couldn't hire anybody without to work in Toronto without a Toronto address.
But then doesn't the people that are getting hired because of the Toronto address asking for more money cause?
Yeah, no, you gotta pay more. Yep, absolutely. It's part of the living down there. Most of our people that work are field people anyway, right? They're in company trucks and they're going out to sites and they're fixing things that way or programming things. They're in the office to program sometimes too, but in the end, you need to make a building work. So from that perspective, it literally allowed us to hire people. Without 111 rail side, we weren't getting any good bodies. So to adapt and hiring change when we went there, that was kind of one of the things. We almost had we did have a sales condo right behind Course Entertainment, George Brown. We did have a unit up in there. We put controls in the whole Regent Park area. We do the controls in that whole area, everything with Daniel's development. I would encourage any of you who are looking for jobs to work there. They're wicked. One of the best developers in Toronto and great people there, like the hearts. That's what it's all about, I think. What else?
So, given that this is a new venture and you're actually generating revenue, and I commend you for that. It's amazing. Did you ever consider onboarding a deeper knowledge expert now that you've sort of crested a critical point?
That was the cultural fit for the hire. I'm going to paint a picture that I'm going to nail. Me and my old man used to talk about when we were going through all that turmoil and the just the turnover for developers. Like, man, we just need a dude, or dude, it could be a girl too, it didn't matter, who retired, who's from the banks in Toronto in software development, sells his condo, moves to Caledonia, you know what I mean? He saves a bunch of money, commutes in every day, probably drive a Corvette in the end. So then I found a guy that kind of liked to do all of it and work in a small team. So it was the right body in the end. He was worth more money. He does drive a Corvette. It's cool. Anyway. But it was about finding the right person who could do both, that could, work with me and like working with me. I mean, ultimately, for years, like if there's a feature or a product in the software that somebody wants to build in, hey, it'd be great if it could do this. This is other change, I guess, technological change, software features. Go ahead, you have a question?
Just as a bridging aspect, did you ever consider hiring a person that will be like an engineer or a software developer at the same time, did MBA or like sort of a management course? Because there are a lot of courses, like I graduated from McMaster, and they offer degrees in software development along with 1 extra year of management.
Yeah.
So that would have been a good bridging aspect of like bridging somebody with you and retaining all that.
It was finding the body, because they got to be available too. I went basically through all the channels I could through the local universities and colleges too, to try to find somebody, and even headhunters as well, like recruitment. I do not, for the record, have a good perspective on recruitment. I'll leave it at that. When it helps, it helps. Sometimes it doesn't. I've been burned once bad, and that taste never left my mouth. $10,000 mistake. All part of the learning curve. Could have been more than 10,000. So yes and no.
So you said why like people can look up on Amazon and will cut into your margins. Have you ever thought of tackling the situation and how?
Say it again, sorry.
So you said like people can look up on Amazon and then cut into your margins.
Yep.
So how do you think of tackling the situation, or is it just inevitable?
Honestly, it's probably inevitable as the generation changes. As Brock probably hires a couple younger people in their facility management, the younger people are gonna be like, why are you giving them the margin? So I think it's kind of inevitable. From there, I would say you have to relationship it. You're like, listen, man, like the reality is if we lose this margin, like we really can't work for you. You're gonna have to find somebody who does. That's the guys that were in there, right? They're okay losing the margins on the stuff, but it makes things really hard to compete. And then when you are competing, the amount of volume you do as a business, like when we buy through distributors, the more we buy, the better our prices, right? So when we compete, that gives us an advantage, right? Then it just comes down to labor rate or who messed the job up most, right? So we have to charge out at, we charge out at top rate, I think $150 an hour. We can go down, we really will lose money at $55 an hour. But you get a small company at $55 an hour doing it themselves, no problem. So in the end, I guess I think the end users are going to start using that. I guess the way to combat it from the distributor perspective is to direct them into their channel of buying at least. Keeping it off of Amazon and into, say, Control Central would be one example. Or building their own e-commerce site, perhaps, that has the products that they can auto buy and make it easy for the customer to buy it that way. You're toast anyway, ultimately, I think, right?
Has there ever been so I might not fully understand the model, but just direct selling to the contractors or even to the end user, like work from that way and work from some backward integration? How's that work?
I've tried, it's a lot of, cold calling sucks, right? You need a lot of bodies to cold call, right? And I have had a couple interns through Rock do it and they don't like it very long. Right, especially when they're being told to FO, that happened. That's a real story. And that's also on the flip side, that's what every other like of our direct software competitors are doing. They're not going through the distribution network.
My only thought would be if you would go through the contractors, especially if you sign larger clients, Daniel Property Group, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You get that. So every time they do a new building, you're already, as soon as that development goes up, you're tied with it.
Yep.
And that almost forces distributors then to take notice of what you're selling.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there might be potential that your competitor doing it, because that's maybe the best way to latch on to someone. Instead of doing individual sales, you're almost like licensing your product out on a full-time basis where you get recurring revenue.
Yeah. I did have one of our contractors in Detroit suggested that with Ford, or any contractor, mandating that whatever contractor they use in there, that they have to use our software.
Yeah.
That would be basically a push. Yeah, you're right. That would be a push backwards here.
Yeah. Because then through that, you're almost like, then you have a servicing component built in, right? So there's almost another service line built in, right? So there's like some growth that can be had through your infrastructure allows you to almost improve your sales function in a way, right? That might be an area of growth that allows you to get to that next stage of integration or.
Well, I think as well, especially locally, like it's really tough for me to sell like our software to, my direct HVAC contractor, like competitor. I mean, the reality is they put all their customers in the software. They put all their equipment that they touch on their software. So, I mean, I would have to sign a legit agreement there, and I mean that's ethical. That's ethics, and I don't play that way. But it's a fear.
Yeah. So
this strategy would work very good in locally for sure, or again with like Fords or national clients, because then at least I'm making a nickel off of every project they do, everything they do, right?
And that in every business too, there's also the service component where it might not be the most it might just be a smaller portion across the period, but you still know you're gonna have recurring revenue each year. We're gonna have to put in $20,000 in servicing to this building, or whatever. I don't know the cost model is, but
it's a big building.
But you have to. That model only works if you reach a critical mass. Otherwise, you're cutting yourself out of the market of the service. If he's too small right now, and you go to that model, you need to land two major clients in the first. Like, what's your runway? Like 3 years? Like, you gotta land 3 major clients in the first 3 years, or you're dead in the water.
Yeah. No,
if you use that model, if you say the exclusivity model, a lot of companies have tried. In this day and age, with so many players, you cannot hem yourself in or ring fence yourself into the hope.
Yeah.
A wise man once told me, hope is not a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
no, it's not. It's good to have with your strategy, but
yeah. So, but that's the idealized model. Because then you don't do anything. Just fire all your sales staff. Like you need just recurring, as Spencer said, reoccurring revenue just piles. It's a license to print money at that point.
Well, that is why we involve everybody, because we give the distributors a fairly good cut out of it, and that's the in for them. It's like 40%, right? They make like $200 a person. We sell it for just under $500, $490, and we give them 40% to encourage them. So I even tried that to get them over the hump. It's like, here's a ton of money for doing nothing, no shipping. Just sell the fries, man. And even that wouldn't get it over the hump.
How technical and in-depth knowledge does the distributor have of your product versus yourself or a sales staff would have, so they can actually train someone and show them the outcome of it, right?
That was the original plan, was to make them full self-sufficient. They didn't want it, they didn't have time for it.
Yeah.
So I used it as an intro. Here, just give me an intro to them. If they're interested, send them over and I'll sell it from there. Any questions about, say, like staffing, like any of that kind of animal of change, or again technological change, best practices, or anything like that you guys are curious about?
You said you had high turnover, meaning you had to fire people.
Or they left.
So how did you approach letting someone go, knowing that you're taking away their next paycheck?
Honestly, it's quite simple. You need 2 people in the office. One person pulls the trigger, the other person guides them through collecting the information. It's the only way. Now, to be fair, I did have to let go of one employee that I really, without going into too many details about it, it was a shitty scenario for everybody. It's worse for them, but it was bad for both. Like from a business perspective, it wasn't a good scenario for reasons I just can't go into details of it, and worse for them in their personal life. But in the end, the person couldn't deliver their job due to what was going on in their personal life. And again, you can't go personal. It's you just have to think about the deliverance of the project and the solution. But yes, two people in the room no matter what. One person fires, you know what I mean, sorry, we're not with, you know what I mean, ends it, the other person guides them through it. I don't like being the person that guides them through it at all. It's stressful. Because then there's like a lot going on, and there's a lot of emotion floating around the room, and there's key steps. You have to get phones, you have to get passwords, you have to get all this stuff after, you know what I mean? They're not thinking about that. Most of the time, people are in shock. I've only had to let go of a few people. Most of the people, again, it just wasn't a fit for the organization, left.
So you guys are such a smaller company. You had this much change in a short amount of time, if you're saying 18 months.
Yeah.
Are you saying culture is your main focus?
Yep.
Keeping it up and going.
Yep.
How did it change? How did it shift? What did you speak to the people who stayed, or who were staying, or who you chose to keep? What was the message conveyed to them? How did you keep things grounded so that you're continuing on the road of success now?
That's a very good question. So first of all, now I was fortunate to be able to create our core values, okay, in our organization. It was my first co-op term, and that was my mission. And I did it with the key teammates, like call our champions. Okay, we talk about, you know, change champions, not the fence sitters, like the good people. Every time I go into any other organization too, you have your champions, and they're the most important people for your change, period. You need teammates. So we wrote our core values: accountability, innovation, responsibility and respect, optimism, and never give up. So ultimately, the people who, it became very obvious who wasn't going to change around those core values. Accountability being I show up to work every day, you know, and I own my responsibility ultimately. Like I own my own mistakes. Whoops, I messed up. This is what I learned. This is what I'm gonna do different next time. Innovation, you know, we change every day. Responsibility to deliver what I'm supposed to do. Respect each other's expertise. Optimism. Without it, you're never gonna do anything. You're gonna give up, and then never give up because of the optimism. So the message ultimately, when we lost a couple key people, it was becoming pretty obvious around the office too that like it just wasn't working. Like we do a lot of work, right? And it's extremely overwhelming. Like very, very, you know, it's wild actually. Construction companies do a lot of work. We don't make high margins, so we have to do a lot of work. Hence softwares and stuff to keep organized. So to some degree it was a relief, but also a fear of, holy shit, like that's our, you know, that person knows everything about this. Right? And over the years, you know, you talk to the guys in the field and they're all, without her, you guys are toast, eh? No, we figured that out. Ultimately, everybody we kept bringing in were young and dynamic and well qualified, green, but, you know, chomping at the bit. So we treated it like honestly, family business from the heart. I just want everybody to be very clear about that. I'm not a wallet guy. I don't like numbers or anything like that, but there's unfortunate realities of business. Just believing and communicating that it's getting better. Right? And staying on top of people and communicating with them often. People get a lot of emails from me, not direct at people, but about, you know, rah-rahs or small wins and things like that. You really have to go back to the very basics that you learned in the course about it. Small wins, like that was honestly probably the most important thing I learned from the course, was you have to, everything. Right? Like right now we're ramping up, we're changing our timesheets from our accounting software into, you know, our hand technologies one, and we're building out a function to import export. So we have to get everybody using the software, 65 people, right? And there's bumps all the time, right? So every week or every 2 weeks we do payroll. It's like, hey, you know, who did good? Give them a shout out. And that's how we battled through. It was just, yes, this happened, and it's moving forward. You know, this is this person. One of them was, anybody know Stevie Godding? Graduated from here not too long ago, one of my best buddies. He's our dispatcher now. It's like, this guy's smart. Work with him. Doesn't know anything about what we do, but work with him. He will make it work. Be patient, right? That was basically it. Positive encouragement, optimism, never giving up. And it's tough at times. Like, there's been times where it's like, F this, I give up. But then you gotta figure it out not to. Yep.
With you being involved at a very young age, developing your core values and talking about, so now you're talking about getting that young talent in there. And we all know the challenge of young talent.
Yes.
We all want them. I do too.
Yes.
And I'm a veteran in my business, but I do want that. I want that innovation, but it comes a lot of baggage trying to keep those ponies in the corral.
It can,
too,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Like you do need to have some sort of constraints with them, right?
Yes.
But still let them run free. So
Yeah.
with all of those,
A tightrope. It's walking a tightrope. Yes.
so with all of those things that you mentioned, how would you classify your leadership style? For this new generation, for these changes, how would you state that, what is your leadership style to get you through this? If you had to put a handle on it, what would it be?
I'm not particularly good at leading by example. I mean, I do good work and I perform well, but I'm not compared to other people, being like Steve, say head down, charging ahead by example. Probably inspirational, make it bigger. Then that's honestly probably it for me.
Motivation?
Yeah, motivational, inspirational, transformational kind of thing. That would probably be what makes me get through. Yeah, it's sticking through it ultimately. And then for me anyway, it's the responsibility of employment. Like if I was gonna live another life, I'd live in the mountains out west and ski every day. It's the best. It would be, but ultimately the responsibility of employment, you have to be there. And then from there, for me, yeah, inspirational. Yeah. Best strategy, everybody needs that. And how size your organization needs somebody, given the rah-rah.
So you have people in your business then that are your foil.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's someone that keeps you. So that's great. You're inspirational, and you are. You're. I'm enjoying listening to you. You're a fun guy. You're energetic.
Thank you.
Great. But do you have that grounding? Do
Yes.
you have that twin or that?
The yang.
Yeah.
Yes. That's basically the other managers. There is a difference. Management, leadership are different, and entrepreneur kind of fits in between all of that. But the managers in our organization are exceptional, kind of task followers, all fun, but more black and white, lead by example, kind of charge ahead kind of crew. And I would have to see the list of the other management styles kind of thing as well. It's not fresh on my head either to talk about the other ones, but like my dad say, for example, he's a lot more kind of black and white to the point with things, where logical versus emotional, versus being more emotional than logical. I have a sense of logic, but it's anyway.
But the fact that you're so passionate about this, it seems more like that you're someone who focuses on building relationships, being the glue all the time. So we are actually like a symbol for the culture in the organization. So automatically people might easily identify with you. So automatically then they get that same level of engagement, and the ones who think that this is not something I want, that's the reason why they probably leave as well. So
I have no problem when the fence sitters leave. That key employee that I talked about, she sadly was the fence sitter.
Can you just explain perhaps what you mean by a fence sitter? Is that like a resistor, or is that someone who's just like whatever?
Okay, you're right. I'm
just wondering.
We got the champion that champions it. Then there's the resistor that are the pain in the butts, and there's fence sitters. I think there was 4, if I remember.
Usually the fence sitters are the ones. I mean, that's the biggest group that you often have to deal with, because if we just use a normal curve, usually that's like the 60% of the people, the fence sitters.
Yeah.
Once you announce change, oh yeah, whatever, it doesn't affect me right away. So why would I care about it? But then you have the resistors, the dispositional resistors.
That's what I mean. Yes.
Whatever you propose, you can sit together with them, you can try to convince them, you can give them whatever benefit. It's like, no, what the heck, I'm not going to change anyway. You can try whatever you want. I'm not doing it, you know?
It's when
this is like part of their DNA. They don't resist because they're not uncertain about things. It's like, it's just part of them. I mean, and you have those kind of people, whatever you're trying to do. And actually, by the way, research has shown that we have something like dispositional resistors. Those are the ones who do not resist the change because they don't know the outcome. It's just like, whatever change, I'm going to resist it.
It doesn't matter,
So,
I like my way better.
That's why I was asking you to clarify, what do you mean by fence sitter?
I misspoke. I forgot the framework. It's the resistors that gotta go. Fence sitters you gotta work with. A lot of our managers were fence sitters and you have to inspire them through.
Now, just a follow-up question. Sorry that I'm going to ask you this, but why do you want to get rid of a resistor? Because sometimes those resistors can actually challenge you in a way that helps you to think further and think of, oh, perhaps we're getting into groupthink, and sometimes these resistors can also be devil's advocates that challenge you. So I'm a bit surprised that you're saying, I want to get rid of resistors.
I think it's a time thing. You're right, because you need to be innovative, and to innovate, you need to be challenged for sure. I agree. It's ultimately when the resistor gets into my way's better, not listening and not playing as a team, when they become an individual, like a non-productive or cancerous, when a teammate gets kind of cancerous from a negative attitude perspective, and it's beyond just challenging you, it becomes insubordination or blatant ignorance to how the company's moving forward already and they're way behind, they've resisted for a certain amount of time, then that's when they become cancerous. That would be the fine, yeah.
In other words, that's again referring to our apples that we were discussing before.
That's
that rotten apple, right?
Yes.
That can affect all the rest, so then you have to take it out of.
Even if it's the biggest apple, it looks the best inside, not good. Yep.
So how do you deal with them? Do you like communicate them or do you just fire them?
Kill them with kindness first. Like just honestly motivate them, get right over it. You never make anything personal as much as you can avoid it. We don't like to fire people, just like for the record. We're not firers of people by any means. You know, most people it's 90% of the people that leave our organization it's just not a cultural fit for them. But no, you got to work with everybody. You have to, it's like due diligence, right? If you can feel, I think, like for me, if I can feel okay about it in my ethical kind of animal, you know, that is the way my ethics run, then you have to make that change. But you have to give it your all. You have to do your due diligence to work with a person. Because they could be challenging you, right? You could get rid of, you know, your best people, literally your best people who could become your champions by giving up on them. So almost I would say when they give up, again now we're on the core values, when they give up and you can tell they've given up, that's when you gotta make a change. Yep.
Has it always been, like if you're a corporate leadership team or CLT, has it always been smooth sailing or do you guys have a lot of internal conflict when you're going through kind of all the changes? Like how do you handle that? And then keep that kind of steady attitude when you're kind of, because then I mean you can have your issue and your conflict behind closed doors, right? But being such a small team, like 60 people, you open those doors and you walk out with that same conflict on your face, like it's gonna ripple through the company. So how, if you've had situations like that, like how have you guys handled that?
Mostly me and my dad have the conflict and we have like it's seriously, it's like we both have the same vision, to be perfectly honest with you. We just say it differently and anyway. Usually, and for us, we've had it out in boardrooms. It's not, I don't like it when there's people around anymore. I get really mad at them, like afterwards, like stop this, right? It's not the time to talk about your effing car charger, you know, that you're mad at me about, like, you know, save it, you know, bucko kind of thing, right? Say that to the guy that signs your checks, right? But I have had people in meetings before, like where we're rolling out a software internally in our own company or out externally, where people will be very, very challenging, right, and aggressive actually, and at a point distracting to the group when you're doing training. And I've had to, tell grown men, like, as a kid, like he was at the end of the table, buddy, stop. Like, you need to breathe. He got kind of mad, apologized later, but it's like, you need to breathe. You need to stop talking. You're distracting the group. Can we get back at this now? And the company was looking around, loving that because this guy's the guy, right? Loving that I gave it to him. But ultimately after that, within our organization, you just got to talk it out, right? Just like family to some degree, just got to air it out. And if you have problems with people, like I brought all the women in our office into a boardroom once and had the meeting. People thought it was ballsy would be the way to put it, but I did it and it worked out great. I don't mind throwing people into conflict and facilitating it. I'll build relationships, even sales relationships, through conflict sometimes. Because when you overcome it, it kind of works good. It's a good way to inflict change and build that kind of trust when you get through things together. Ultimately, I got to fall back on the optimism and breathing and staying calm. Never react emotionally. Again, it's something that some people got to deal with a lot more than others. Some people struggle more with it. That's your individual. So it's about breathing and calming down. Don't be scared to take charge, and listen, stop. Right? Just like you would anywhere, right? When you've had enough with your roommates, right? Leave dishes everywhere, right? You have to sit down, you have to have that talk sometimes, right? Everybody fight over dishes throughout your university or what? Yeah. Okay. 5 minutes left. I appreciate you guys' time. More or less killed it, I think.
So I was just writing down a number of things. So first of all, for your presentation, Aaron, I think that many of you, a lot of ideas that you were sharing, they can connect with some of the topics that you've addressed now. There's no perfect recipe to being a successful leader or leading change or whatever, but there are 3 points that I just jotted down that I believe that really made you where you are at right now. So first of all, self-awareness, I would say, is a very important
number one
point that you've mentioned. Then this positive psychology, like being optimistic, passionate, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That's the reason why you're also able to keep your group together.
Yeah.
And then of course, also the fact that you're open to new experiences. It's like you're creating that environment for continuous learning, not only for your followers, but the thing is that you're also open to that as well all the time. So I think those are 3 major takeaways for me, at least based on what you were saying. So big thanks for your presentation. I enjoyed it.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you so much. So that's it for